Nolan Hayes had one rule: never let anyone in. For 3 years he kept it, raising his little girl alone in a house that had forgotten how to laugh. Then Elena Brooks moved in next door with her loud music and her stubborn kindness, and his 6-year-old daughter decided, without asking him, that this woman was going to stay. What Nolan didn't know was that one accidental moment at a town charity night would tear down every wall he'd built and force him to choose between the fear that had kept him safe and the love that might finally break him. If you make it to the end of this story, please hit that like button and leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels tonight. The first thing Nolan Hayes noticed about the moving truck was that it was too big for the driveway. It was 7:30 on a Saturday morning in late September, and he was standing barefoot on his porch with a coffee mug he'd already reheated twice, watching a rented box truck try to back into the narrow strip of gravel next door. The driver was doing a bad job of it. The truck lurched, stopped, lurched again. Somewhere inside the cab, a woman's voice was yelling directions that the driver either couldn't hear or was choosing to ignore. Nolan took a sip of his coffee. It was bitter. He'd forgotten the sugar again. "Dad," his daughter's voice came from behind the screen door. Lily was still in her pajamas, the ones with the moons on them that were getting too short in the legs. She had her cheek pressed against the mesh, one eye squinted shut like a sailor looking through a telescope. "Who's that?" "Somebody moving in." "To the Petersons' house?" "The Petersons moved out 3 weeks ago, Lil." "Oh." She considered this with the gravity of a 6-year-old processing a shift in the known universe. "Is it a family?" "I don't know yet." "Do they have kids?" "I said I don't know yet." He heard the squeak of the screen door, and then the small thud of her bare feet on the porch boards, and then Lily was beside him, her hand curling around 2 of his fingers, the way she'd done since she was 2 years old. She smelled like the strawberry shampoo he let her pick out at the grocery store, even though it was $3 more than the regular kind. She tilted her face up at him. "Can we go say hi?" "No." "Why?" "Because people don't like being bothered while they're unloading a truck." "But Miss Kathy at the library says neighbors are supposed to say, 'Welcome.'" "Miss Kathy at the library," Nolan said, "also says that everyone needs a library card, and you have 3. "That's because I keep losing them." "That's my point." Lily made a small sound that was half laugh and half protest, and Nolan felt the corner of his mouth twitch without permission. He steered her back toward the door. "Come on, breakfast. I'm making the good pancakes." "The ones with the bananas?" "The ones with the bananas." "Can I have 3? "You can have as many as you can eat without asking me to eat the last one for you." She gave him a look of serious betrayal, because that had happened exactly once, and he had apparently decided to let her carry the shame of it for the rest of her life. Then she disappeared inside, leaving the screen door to slap twice behind her. Nolan stayed on the porch for another minute. From where he was standing, he could see the woman now. She had climbed down from the passenger side of the truck and was standing with her hands on her hips, looking at the driveway like it had personally wronged her. She was maybe his age, maybe a little younger. Dark hair pulled up in one of those messy knots that looked like it had been done in 30 seconds and would somehow stay like that all day. A flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled to her elbows, jeans with paint on one knee. She was laughing at something the driver was saying through the open window, and her laugh carried all the way across the 2 lawns and the chain-link fence between them, loud and uncomplicated and completely without self-consciousness. Nolan went inside and closed the door. He'd bought the house on Maple Street 7 years ago, back when he was still married, back when the plan had been 2 kids and a dog, and a garage full of the kind of projects he'd dreamed about all through his 20s. He had gotten 1 kid. He had not gotten the dog. The garage had projects in it, but they weren't the ones he'd imagined, and the wife was gone, and the plan was gone. And what was left was this: a man and a small girl and a routine so carefully constructed that a stranger moving in next door felt, somewhere under his ribs, like a problem. He was a carpenter. Furniture, mostly. Custom pieces, tables and bookshelves, and the occasional built-in, done out of the detached shop behind the house. It paid the bills. It kept his hands busy. When Lily was at school, he could disappear for 6 hours into the smell of cedar and sawdust and forget, for a while, that he was a person in a world with other people in it. He liked it that way. He made the pancakes. He cut them up for Lily because she always forgot and took bites that were too big. He drank his coffee standing at the counter because sitting down felt like committing to something, and he wasn't in the mood to commit to anything this morning. Through the kitchen window, he could see bits of the activity next door. A mattress being carried in, a floor lamp, a cardboard box that said kitchen, fragile, no seriously in thick black marker. "She's pretty." Nolan turned. Lily had syrup on her chin. She was looking out the window with the serene focus of a small person who had just decided something. "Who's pretty?" "The lady." "You haven't even met her." "I can see her from here." "Eat your pancakes." "Dad?" "Eat." Lily ate. But she kept glancing out the window between bites, and Nolan pretended not to notice, and he told himself that a little girl being curious about a new neighbor was a completely normal thing, and he absolutely was not going to make it into anything else. The first time he actually spoke to her was 3 days later, and it was because of a raccoon. He was coming out of the shop around dusk, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen better years, when he heard the yelling. Not scared yelling, annoyed yelling. The kind of yelling that suggested the yeller had reached the absolute end of her patience and was now negotiating with a force she could not control. Get out of there. I mean it. I'm not kidding. That is my trash. I don't care what your feelings are about it. Out." Nolan walked around the side of his house and stopped at the fence. The new neighbor was standing in her side yard in a t-shirt and gym shorts and one rain boot. She was holding a broom. The broom was being used, apparently, as a tool of diplomatic negotiation with a raccoon that was sitting on top of her overturned trash can with the calm entitlement of a monarch who had just been informed that the peasants had arrived. "Hey," Nolan said. She turned. She had a piece of hair stuck to her cheek. She had, he now realized, only one rain boot because the other foot was bare, and she was standing on what looked like a muddy patch of lawn, and she was trying to keep that foot suspended in a way that would keep it from touching anything too cold or too wet. "Hi," she said. "I'm Elena. I live here now." "Do you know anything about raccoons?" "A little." "Is there do they respond to tone, or—" "Not really. Because I've tried firm. I've tried reasonable. I've tried the broom. The broom did nothing. The broom has failed me." "You have to wait it out." "I don't want to wait it out. I want to eat dinner." "Then get in the house and let it finish." "Let it finish? It's my trash." "It's the raccoon's trash now." She stared at him for a second. Then she started laughing, and it was that same laugh from the first morning, big and unguarded and a little bit hoarse, and Nolan, against his will, felt something in his chest go still in a way that was not unpleasant. "You're very helpful," she said. "Thank you, truly. A masterclass in neighborly assistance." "Go inside, Elena." "You remembered my name." "You said it 12 seconds ago." "Still." She tipped the broom in what might have been a salute and limped back toward her porch, one boot on, one foot lifted, and Nolan stood at the fence for longer than he needed to and watched her go. When he turned around, Lily was standing on their back steps in her school clothes, staring at him with her arms crossed. "What?" he said. "Nothing." "Don't say nothing like that." "What?" "I didn't say anything." "Your face said something." "My face just lives on my head, Dad." She went inside. Nolan wiped his hands on the rag again, even though they were already clean, and stayed outside until the raccoon finished its dinner and waddled, bored, into the hedge. After that, it was hard to avoid her. She was the kind of person who waved. Not a polite wave. Not a neighborly acknowledgement. A real wave. Every single time, big and full-armed, like she was trying to flag down a boat. She waved when he was taking out the recycling. She waved when he was carrying lumber from his truck. She waved when he was just standing on the porch drinking coffee, which was most mornings. And she waved even when he only half lifted his hand back, which was all he ever gave her. Lily, meanwhile, had committed treason. It started with the cookies. Elena had brought over a plate of cookies on the Saturday of her second week, the kind of gesture Nolan thought people stopped doing around 1987, and Lily had answered the door because Nolan had been in the shop. And by the time he'd come inside, Elena was sitting at his kitchen table drinking tap water out of one of his chipped mugs and explaining to Lily how to make cookies that didn't come out flat. "The butter has to be cold," she was saying. "Not room temperature, cold. Everyone tells you room temperature and they are wrong, and I will die on this hill." "What hill?" Lily said. "It's an expression, sweetheart. It means I really believe it." "But there's no actual hill." There is not, no. Then why? Nolan cleared his throat. Both of them looked up.
Hi, Elena said. She did not stand up. She did not look particularly sorry. Your daughter let me in. I brought cookies. I'm leaving in a second, I swear. You don't have to leave. He didn't know why he said it. It came out before he had a chance to inspect it, and once it was out, he couldn't pull it back. And Elena smiled at him with the warm, surprised expression of someone who had expected a door and found a window. Okay, she said. I won't. Lily beamed.
Nolan, who had spent 3 years getting his life down to a shape he could carry, understood in that moment that the shape was about to change. He didn't know how much yet. He didn't know in what direction. He just knew it, the way he'd known, back when he was 23 and standing on the porch of a house he couldn't afford, that the life he was about to sign up for was not the one he'd been raised to expect. He pulled out a chair. He sat down. He ate a cookie. The cookie was, aggravatingly, very good. Where's her mom? Elena asked it 2 weeks later, in his driveway, on a Tuesday evening, while Lily was inside doing her reading homework, and the sun was doing that thing it does in early October where it goes gold and slow and makes everything look like a memory. Nolan was under the hood of his truck. He'd been trying to figure out why the driver's side headlight kept flickering, and he had a wrench in his hand and grease on his forearm, and the question caught him with no time to arrange his face. He kept his head down. She's not around. Not around like not around. He heard Elena shift her weight. She was leaning on the front bumper. She'd come over to return a casserole dish that Lily had given her 2 weekends ago, full of brownies, and she had somehow not left yet. I'm sorry, Elena said. That was a nosy question. I shouldn't have. It's fine. It's not fine. I'm sorry. She left. He didn't mean to say it. He hadn't said those words out loud to another adult in almost 2 years. The ones who knew, knew. The ones who didn't know, didn't ask. That was the arrangement he had with the town, the silent one, the one that had let him keep breathing after the whole thing caved in. And now here was this woman in his driveway on a Tuesday evening, with her hair in that same messy knot and her arms crossed over a cardigan that was too big for her. And she had asked him a question, and he had answered it. He straightened up. He closed the hood. She left when Lily was 3, he said. I don't know where she is now. Last I heard, Arizona. We don't talk about it. Lily doesn't really remember her, and I'd prefer to keep it that way until she's old enough to ask her own questions. Elena nodded. She didn't say anything for a second. Okay, she said finally. Thanks for telling me. I won't bring it up again. Thank you. Can I ask one more thing? Elena, is she a good kid? Like, actually, because she seems like a really good kid, and I don't want to assume, but she's a good kid. Okay, good. That's what I thought. She handed him the casserole dish. Their fingers touched for half a second. Nolan did not think about it. He absolutely did not think about it. He went inside and heated up leftover spaghetti and helped Lily with a word problem about apples, and did not think about it the entire rest of the night, which was how he knew already that he was in trouble. The 3rd Saturday of October was cold, and the leaves on Maple Street were turning, and Lily was going through a phase where she wanted to tell stories at dinner. There's a boy at school named Mason, she announced, stabbing a green bean with what Nolan considered unnecessary force. He said his dad has a motorcycle. Okay. He said it goes 100 miles an hour. It doesn't go 100 miles an hour. He said. Kids lie, Lil. Why? Sometimes because they want things to be more exciting than they are. Lily chewed. She had the look on her face that she got when she was working up to something. The look that meant she was going to try to get a thing she wanted by framing it as a thing he wanted. Miss Elena said she might come to the charity thing. The what? The charity thing, at the square, for the food bank. She said, everyone's going. Everyone is not going. She said you should come too. Nolan set his fork down. She said that. Yeah, she said it's a fun night and she doesn't want to go alone because she doesn't know that many people yet, and she said maybe you and me could come and hang out with her. Lily. What? Don't make plans for me. I didn't make plans. I said maybe. Maybe is a plan. Maybe is not a plan. Maybe is a maybe. He looked at her. She looked back at him with her enormous brown eyes and her syrup-stained mouth and the small, shrewd expression of a 6-year-old who had figured out sometime around her 5th birthday that she could get further in negotiations with her father by being logical than by being cute. "I'll think about it," he said. "That means yes. That means I'll think about it." "That's what you say when you mean yes." "That's what I say when I mean I'll think about it." "Okay," she said cheerfully. "You mean yes." She went back to her green beans. Nolan stared at his plate for a long moment. Somewhere across the fence, a light went on in the window of the kitchen next door, and he could see, just barely, the outline of Elena standing at her sink, rinsing something, her shoulders moving a little to music he couldn't hear. He ate the rest of his dinner without tasting it. He didn't see her for 4 days after that. She wasn't on her porch. Her car was gone in the mornings and back late. He told himself he wasn't tracking it. He told himself the same lie the next morning, and then the next. And by the time Friday came around, he had almost talked himself into believing it. Then, Friday afternoon, she was at his front door. She was holding a casserole dish again. A different one this time, glass with a red lid. Her hair was down. She was wearing a coat he hadn't seen before, and a look on her face that was carefully, deliberately neutral. "Hi," she said. "I owed you a dish, technically. I mean, I didn't owe you this dish, but I felt weird showing up empty-handed." "What's in it?" "Chicken and rice. My mom's recipe. I made too much because I cannot cook for one person. I haven't figured out how yet, and I thought, I don't know, I thought maybe Lily would like it." "Lily will like it." "Okay. Good." She handed it over. Their fingers did not touch this time. She had clearly planned for that. "So I heard you might come Saturday." "To the charity night, the food bank thing, at the square." "Lily said something." "Lily told me you said yes. Lily is a small liar." Elena laughed. That laugh again. The one that made his house feel smaller, and shoved her hands in her coat pockets. "Well," she said, "no pressure, but it would be nice to see a face I know. I've been here a month, and the only person I've actually had a full conversation with is you and a raccoon, and the raccoon has stopped returning my calls. I'll come." It came out before he weighed it, before he factored it, before he ran the thing through the careful machinery he'd built in the last 3 years for deciding whether or not a thing was worth doing. Her face did something, just for a second. A small, surprised softening, like she hadn't expected him to say yes that easily, and then she put it away and nodded and stepped back. "Okay," she said. "Good, I'll see you there." "Yeah. Bring Lily." "I was going to." "Right, obviously. Okay, bye, Nolan." "Bye, Elena." She went down his steps. He watched her cross the lawn. He watched her disappear into her house. He stood at the door with a casserole dish in his hands and the smell of butter and thyme coming through the lid, and a feeling in his chest that he hadn't felt in a very long time and didn't quite have a name for. He turned. Lily was standing at the top of the stairs in her sock feet, holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear. "Was that Miss Elena?" "Yes." "Are we going to the charity thing?" "Yes." Lily smiled the smile that had been ruining him since the day she was born, wide and unguarded and completely confident in the world's good intentions. "Okay," she said. "I already picked my dress." Saturday came cold and clear. Nolan put on a button-down shirt that he almost never wore and jeans that were not his work jeans, and he spent a suspicious amount of time in the bathroom mirror making sure his hair didn't look like he'd tried. And then he looked at himself and felt, briefly, like a fool. Lily wore a green dress with white flowers on it. She wore the dress with her red winter boots because she had opinions and those opinions were not negotiable. And she insisted on bringing her stuffed rabbit inside her coat because the rabbit, she explained, had also never been to a charity event. The square was strung with lights. There were folding tables along the sidewalk, hot chocolate and apple cider, and a bake sale that looked like it had been assembled by a committee of people who all secretly hated each other. A small stage had been set up in front of the bandstand. A local bluegrass band was playing. The mayor was standing near the cider table in a sweater vest, talking to a woman Nolan vaguely recognized from the hardware store. Elena was standing near the stage when they found her. She was in a navy blue dress under her coat, and her hair was up again, but a different up than usual, careful and neat. And when she saw them coming, her whole face changed. "You came," she said. "I said I would." "I thought Lily might have strong-armed you." "She did. A little.
I did not, Lily said, offended. She did, Nolan said. Hi, Lily. You look beautiful. Thank you. This is Mr. Bunny. He's never been to a charity thing. Well, we'll have to make sure he has a good time. Lily beamed. Elena looked up at Nolan, and for a second there was nothing between them but the cold air and the blue grass, and a question that neither of them had the nerve to ask out loud. Then someone tapped a microphone. 3 sharp thuds.
All right, folks, a voice boomed through the speakers. It's that time of the night, the part y'all come for, or the part y'all hide from, one or the other. Couples challenge, up on the stage, we need 4 pairs. Any brave souls, come on now, don't make me come find you. Lily's head snapped around like a hunting dog. You and Miss Elena should do it. Absolutely not. Dad? No. It's for the food bank. Lily. You told me we should always help the food bank. I didn't say to humiliate myself for the food bank. Please, 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 please. Elena was laughing. Actually laughing. One hand over her mouth. She's good, she said. She's really good. Has she considered law school? Don't encourage her. Nolan, it's for the food bank. Don't you start. Come on, what's the worst that could happen? He looked at her. She was looking at him with that grin, the one that was mostly mischief and a little bit something else, and Lily was tugging his hand and bouncing on her toes, and the bluegrass band had started playing something faster, and the mayor was waving people toward the stage, and somewhere in the logical part of Nolan's brain, the part that had spent 3 years keeping his life small and safe and survivable, an alarm was going off. He ignored it. Fine, he said. Fine, fine. 1 challenge, 1. And if I hate it, I'm leaving. Deal. She grabbed his hand. She just grabbed it, like they'd been holding hands their whole lives, and she pulled him toward the stage, and Lily clapped so hard her rabbit fell out of her coat, and Nolan, for the first time in a long time, felt something that was not fear and not grief, but something else. Something that lived in between, something that felt dangerously close to wanting. He did not know, yet, what was going to happen on that stage. He did not know that in about 9 minutes he would be standing under strings of Edison bulbs with Elena Brooks's face closer to his than any woman's face had been in 3 years, and that the distance he had so carefully maintained was about to collapse, and that the part of his life he thought he had buried was about to come walking back up out of the ground. He only knew as he climbed the 2 wooden steps onto the stage that Elena's hand was warm, and that Lily, from the front row, was watching them with the satisfied expression of a general whose plans were proceeding at last exactly as she had hoped. The stage was smaller than it looked from the ground. That was the first thing Nolan noticed when he stepped up onto the plywood platform with Elena's hand still in his. The second thing he noticed was that he could see very clearly every face in the first 3 rows, and every face in the first 3 rows was looking at him. The mayor was at the microphone, wearing the exhausted grin of a man who had been volunteered into public speaking 1 too many times. All right, we got 4 pairs, 4 brave pairs. Give 'em a hand, folks, because nobody else was raising theirs. A scatter of applause. Somebody whistled. Lily was in the front row, sitting on the shoulders of Elena's own contribution to the evening, which was to say, on Elena's cousin's husband, a tall man named Rick, whom Elena had apparently drafted into babysitting duty the second she'd realized her daughter's dad was being dragged on stage. Lily was waving Mr. Bunny over her head like a flag. Nolan was going to have words with both of them later. He did not know, in that moment, which one he was more annoyed at, Lily or himself. The challenge, the mayor said, reading off a laminated card, is a 3-parter. Part 1. And listen close now because Reverend Dawson wrote the rules and he was not messing around. Part 1. You each get a blindfold. One of you is going to wear it and the other one is going to talk you through an obstacle course. And I use that word generously because the obstacle course is 6 folding chairs and a cardboard box. Part 2. After that, you switch. Part 3, which we're calling the grand finale because it sounds fancier than it is, y'all are going to take turns feeding each other pie. Without using your hands. I know. I didn't write it. Don't look at me. Somebody in the audience laughed hard enough to start coughing. Elena turned to him. She was still holding his hand. She had not let go since she'd grabbed it on the ground, and it occurred to Nolan that either she hadn't noticed or she had noticed and didn't care. and he was not sure which answer he wanted to be true. "Listen," she said quietly. "If you want to bail, bail now. I'll tell them you got a call about Lily. I'm not bailing. You hate this. I hate this a normal amount. That's a lie, and you know it." "Elena." "What?" "We're doing the chairs." She grinned. It was a small, private grin meant just for him, and it made the bluegrass and the cold and the row of staring faces go a little softer at the edges. She squeezed his hand once and let go, and a teenager in a volunteer t-shirt came over and handed each of them a folded blue bandana. "Who's going first?" the mayor said. "He is," Elena said before Nolan could speak. "Why me? Because if I go first, you'll refuse to do yours, and then we lose, and I didn't climb up here to lose." Unbelievable. "Put it on." He put it on. The bandana smelled faintly of detergent. The world went dark. He heard Elena laugh, the nervous edge of her laugh, the one she only did up here in front of people. And then he heard the shuffle of chairs being rearranged, and the mayor making some kind of joke he didn't catch, and then Elena's voice right in front of him, closer than he expected. "Okay, Hayes, listen to me. I'm going to get you through this. It's 6 chairs. It's 6 chairs in a pattern designed by a reverend. We don't know his mind. Take 2 steps forward." He took 2 steps. "Now stop. There's a chair at 2 o'clock for you. Step around it to your left." "My left or your left?" "Nolan, we are facing each other. It's the same left." "It's not, actually." "Oh my God." "My left. Step to my left. Go." He stepped. His knee brushed something wooden and unsteady. The crowd made a noise that was half warning, half delight. Elena laughed. "You almost killed a chair. Keep going. 3 more steps. There's a box." "Where's the box?" "It's directly in front of you. Directly. Lift your leg. You're about to kick it." He lifted his leg. His foot hit cardboard. The crowd cheered. "See," Elena said, "I'm a very good navigator." "That is not what this is." 2 more chairs. Go right. My right. You're right. Everybody's right. He went right. He heard Lily's laugh cut through the noise, unmistakable, the way it always did, the laugh that had been keeping his ribs warm for 6 years. He went left at Elena's next command. He ducked. There was apparently a low-hanging string of lights that nobody had warned either of them about, and Elena swore under her breath and pulled him sideways by the elbow, and then her hand was on his chest, flat, just for a second, to stop him. "There," she said. "You made it." He pulled the bandana off. She was standing closer than he'd thought. Her eyes were bright. Her hair was coming loose from its knot on one side. The crowd was clapping, and somebody was yelling something about a time record, and Elena did not move, and neither did he. "Your turn," he said. "Be kind to me," she said. "No promises." He tied the bandana around her head. His knuckles brushed her temple. Her hair smelled like something warm, something that wasn't shampoo, something closer to the air in her kitchen the day she'd sat at his table eating the chipped mug water like it was fine wine. He stepped back. The teenager reset the chairs. The mayor said something into the microphone that Nolan didn't hear. "All right," Nolan said. 3 steps forward. 3 big steps or 3 small steps? Medium steps. Go. Define medium. Elena. "I have short legs." "Your legs are fine. Go." She went. He guided her around the first chair. She was worse at this than he was. She kept asking for more information than he was giving her. She kept arguing with his directions. She kept stopping to ask whether he was lying about where the box was. And the crowd loved it. The crowd was losing its mind. The crowd was watching 2 adults bicker their way through a cardboard obstacle course in the middle of a charity fundraiser, like it was the funniest thing they'd seen in a year. "Step over the box," Nolan said. "I don't trust you." "There's a box right there, Elena. You have to step over it." "You're going to let me fall on my face." "I'm not going to let you fall on your face. Swear." "I swear." She stepped. Her foot caught the edge of the box anyway. She pitched forward, arms pinwheeling, and he caught her. Not gracefully, not the way a romance novel would have written it, just the panicked reach of a man who had spent his life catching things that were about to break. And she ended up with both her hands on his chest and her blindfolded face a few inches from his, and the crowd made a sound like a collective breath being drawn. Nolan did not move. Elena was laughing, a shaky, surprised laugh.
She hadn't taken the bandana off. "Did I make it?" she said. "You made it." "Did I fall?" "Almost." "Did you catch me?" "Yes." "Good job, Hayes." She reached up and pulled the bandana off her eyes. She was still laughing. Her hands were still on his chest. The laugh faded slowly, the way a song fades out at the end of a track. And she was just looking at him, and he was looking at her, and the crowd had gone quiet in a way Nolan did not like. Elena's eyes flicked down to his mouth. It was not on purpose. He could tell it was not on purpose. It was the kind of small, involuntary thing a person does when something is happening to them that they did not plan for, and he felt it land in his chest like a shove. She stepped back. "Pie," she said too loudly. "There's pie. We have to do the pie." "Right, pie." "Forget the pie. There's no pie. Move on." "No, there's pie. I can see it from here." The teenager was, in fact, holding 2 paper plates of apple pie. The teenager was looking at them with the expression of a young person who had just seen something she was not supposed to see and was going to tell her friends about it later. She set the plates on 2 folding chairs. The mayor cleared his throat. "Pie," he said. "No hands. Remember, folks, this is for a good cause." "Who wrote these rules?" Nolan muttered. "You heard him. Reverend Dawson. I'm going to have a conversation with the Reverend." "Stop stalling, Hayes." He knelt down next to the chair. He felt distantly, like a man observing his own body from somewhere outside it. He bit into a slice of pie without using his hands, came up with apple filling on his chin, and Elena was laughing so hard she had to brace herself against the chair, and the crowd was howling, and Lily, from the front row, was screaming with delight in a way that made the last knot of reluctance in his chest dissolve. Then Elena knelt down. She leaned toward the other slice of pie. Only she didn't quite manage it. Her hair fell forward, catching in the whipped cream, and Nolan, without thinking, reached out and tucked it behind her ear. His fingers grazed her jaw, just for a second. She froze. He froze. They were kneeling on a plywood stage in the middle of the town square, in front of 300 people in a bluegrass band, and he had his hand on the side of her face, and the moment stretched and stretched and stretched, and then Elena leaned forward and took a bite of the pie and laughed with her mouth full, and the crowd erupted and Nolan stood up too fast and the spell cracked, but it didn't break. It didn't break. They walked off the stage together. The mayor was announcing that the winners would be named at the end of the night, based on the decibel level of the applause, which Nolan was almost sure was not a real metric. Elena was wiping whipped cream off her face with a napkin someone had handed her. Lily had come barreling through the crowd and thrown herself at them, small arms wrapped around Elena's waist. And Elena was laughing and accepting the hug and looking over the top of Lily's head at Nolan with an expression he could not read. He didn't try. He was afraid of what he'd find if he looked too hard. They stayed another half hour. They drank cider. Elena talked to a woman from the library. Nolan shook hands with 2 clients he hadn't seen in months. Lily decided at some point that she was exhausted, and she made that decision in the way small children make it, which was by becoming unreasonable about the texture of her mittens. "Time to go home, kid." "No." "Yes." "I'm not tired. You're standing here arguing with me about mittens, Lily. The mittens are itchy." "They're not itchy. They feel itchy." "You have a feeling. That's different." Elena was watching this with the helpless amusement of a person who had not yet figured out how to be helpful in a parental standoff. She crouched down to Lily's level. "Hey, what if I walked home with you guys? Would that help?" "Yes." "Cool, let's go." "You don't have to," Nolan said. "I know I don't have to. I want to. It's cold and I'm walking home anyway, and we live 18 feet apart." "More than 18 feet. Not much more." He couldn't argue with that. They walked back through the square, past the cider table and the bluegrass band and the folding chairs that somebody was already starting to stack. The lights swung on their strings in the small, cold wind. Lily, after about 2 blocks of loud resistance, surrendered, and Nolan carried her the rest of the way with her face buried in his shoulder and Mr. Bunny dangling from her limp hand. Elena walked beside him, her hands in her coat pockets, her breath showing white in the air. Neither of them said anything for the first block. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was a loaded one, the kind of silence that sits on your chest. "So," Elena said finally. "So? That happened?"
that happened. The thing on the stage. Elena.
I'm just saying, it happened. I'm not making it a thing. You caught me, and then you did that thing with my hair, and I don't know, it was a moment. I think it was a moment. I think we both know it was a moment, and if I don't say it out loud, I'm going to go home and lose my mind about it, so I'm saying it out loud. Okay? 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 That's all you're going to say. Elena, I have a sleeping 6-year-old on my shoulder, and I have not processed a single thing that happened in the last 2 hours. Can we not do this on a sidewalk? Yeah, no, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm doing that thing where I talk too much because I'm nervous. I'm aware of it. I apologize. It's fine. It's not fine. I'm spiraling. Elena. Yeah. It's fine.
She went quiet. They walked the rest of the way to the houses. When they got to the point where her walk diverged from his, a crack in the sidewalk that neither of them had ever paid attention to before tonight, she stopped and he stopped, and Lily made a small sleep noise against his neck. "Good night," Elena said. "Good night. Thank you for coming. Thank you for making me." She smiled. It was a small smile, a tired one, a smile that had a whole conversation folded up inside it. "Get some sleep, Hayes. You too, Brooks." She went up her walk. He went up his. He did not look back to see if she was looking back. He got Lily inside, got her out of the green dress and into her moon pajamas, without waking her fully, got her tucked under the comforter with Mr. Bunny on the pillow next to her head. He stood in her doorway for a minute and watched her sleep, the way he did most nights. And then he went down to the kitchen and stood at the window with no light on, and stared at the yellow square of Elena's kitchen across the fence for longer than he wanted to admit. He did not sleep well. In the morning he woke up at 5:30, which was normal, and he made coffee, which was normal, and he went out to the shop by 6, which was normal, and he tried very hard for the next 11 hours to pretend that nothing had changed. Nothing in his life changed, and everything in his life changed. It was the look. That was the problem. It wasn't the stage, it wasn't the pie, it wasn't even the moment he'd caught her, though that had certainly not helped. It was the look she'd given him at the crack in the sidewalk, that small, tired smile, the one that said, "I saw you, and I am not going to pretend I did not see you." He could not outrun that look. He tried. He spent Sunday sanding a tabletop he'd finished sanding 2 days before. He spent Monday at the lumberyard arguing with a guy named Dale about the grade of a maple board. He spent Tuesday helping Lily build a diorama about the rainforest for her class, which involved cutting tiny leaves out of green construction paper for almost 3 hours. And the entire time, in the back of his head, there was that look. On Wednesday, Elena brought him a pie. She did it at 7 in the evening, and she did it knocking on his front door with the pie in one hand and her coat unbuttoned like she'd walked over in a rush. And she did it with a face that suggested she had prepared a speech on the walk over but had lost it somewhere between her house and his porch. "I owe you pie," she said. "What?" "From Saturday. I lost. We lost. But also personally, I lost, because I cheated on the blindfolded portion, which I will now confess to. I peeked. Twice. So, this is a restitution pie. For the town, and also for you. You cheated. A little. On a charity blindfold challenge. It was mostly accidental. Elena, are you going to take the pie, or are we going to stand here?" He took the pie. "Lily's in the kitchen," he said. "She's doing math." "At 7 at night? She's 6 and she's mad about it, but the worksheet is due tomorrow." "Can I say hi?" He hesitated, only for a second, but she caught the hesitation the way she seemed to catch everything about him lately, and her face did a small, careful thing, and she took a step back. "It's okay," she said. "I can go. I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding." "Nolan, Come in. I'm sorry. Come in." She came in. Lily, hearing the voices, came skidding out into the hall in her sock feet, and her whole face lit up at the sight of Elena in a way that made Nolan's stomach drop in a complicated way. Lily had not lit up like that for another adult in a long time. Not for his mother on the phone, not for her teacher, not for the woman at the library who always saved her the books about horses. Only Elena. and Elena was aware of it. Nolan could see her register it, see her hold her face very still so as not to make it a big deal, see her kneel down like a person who knew that kneeling down was the right thing to do. "How's the math?" Elena said. "I hate it." "What's it about?" "Subtraction. Subtraction is the worst one." "Thank you." "I'm serious. Addition is fine. Multiplication is fine. Subtraction is sneaky. Subtraction lies to you." "That is what I am saying." Elena looked up at Nolan with a grin that was part apology and part triumph. He shook his head at her, not quite smiling, and went into the kitchen to put the pie on the counter. When he came back, Elena had Lily's math worksheet on her lap and was arguing, with great seriousness, that the number 7 had a personality problem. He let it happen. He let it happen for an hour. Elena did the math with Lily. Then Elena read half a chapter of a book about a girl and a dragon, which Lily had chosen from her shelf with the kind of careful deliberation a small child uses when she is trying to keep a good thing going. Then Lily fell asleep with her head on Elena's shoulder on the living room couch, and Elena looked up at Nolan over the top of Lily's sleeping head, and her face was a mix of things he didn't have the vocabulary for. "You okay?" he said. "Yeah." "You sure?" "Yeah, I don't usually, kids, I don't really, this is new for me." "Okay." "I like her a lot." "I can tell. I don't want to mess anything up for her. I know whatever is going on, whatever this is, I know you have to be careful about her. And I don't want to be somebody who's here and then not here. I wouldn't do that to her." He sat down across from her on the coffee table. He kept his voice low so he wouldn't wake Lily. "Elena, I know, I'm doing it again. Elena, stop." She stopped. "I don't know what this is either," he said. "I have not had this conversation in a long time. I'm not good at it. I wasn't good at it when I was good at it. So you're going to have to be patient with me because the last time I let somebody in, she left, and I spent 3 years making sure that didn't happen again, and now I don't know what I'm doing. So that's where I am. Okay? 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 That's all you're going to say. I'm using your line. I noticed. I'm not going anywhere, Nolan. I'm not. I moved here because I was done with the city. I was done with the noise. I was done with every man in my old zip code. I came here to start something different, and the something different turned out to be your kids' math homework on a Wednesday at 9 p.m. And I'm okay with that. I'm more than okay with that." He could not speak for a second. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay." She shifted, carefully, and he took Lily from her. The dead weight of a 6-year-old is a very specific weight, and he had carried it 1,000 times. And he walked her upstairs while Elena stood in the living room with her arms folded across her chest, looking at the family photos on his wall like somebody who was trying very hard to pretend she wasn't looking at anything at all. When he came back down, she was at the front door. "I should go," she said. "You don't have to." "I should." "Okay?" "Nolan." "Yeah." She looked at him, really looked at him. The porch light behind her was making a halo of her hair, and her hands were in her coat pockets, and the air between them was doing that thing it had been doing since Saturday night. The thing where it wasn't quite air anymore, where it had thickened into something with gravity. "I'm not going to kiss you tonight," she said. "Okay." "Not because I don't want to. I want to. I really want to. I think if we do that, there's no taking it back, and I think you need to be sure, and I don't think you're sure yet, and I don't want to be the thing that made you make a decision you weren't ready for." "Elena, let me finish, please." "Okay." "Whenever you are ready, whenever you know, you come find me. Across the fence, across the yard, across the raccoon, I don't care. You come find me, and I'll be there." He swallowed. He could feel the pulse in his throat. "Okay," he said. She smiled, a small, real smile. And then she was out the door and down the porch and across the lawn, and he stood in his open doorway with the cold air pouring in around his legs and watched her go into her house, and he stood there a long time after the door closed behind her. He did not know then that they had just bought themselves one more week of pretending. He did not know that by the following Saturday, his mother would call him with a piece of news that made his chest go cold, or that the county newspaper would run a photograph from the charity night that set the whole town to whispering, or that a man in a gray suit from a downtown firm would knock on Elena's door on a Tuesday evening and offer her the kind of job a person does not turn down twice. He only knew, as he closed his front door that night and pressed his forehead against the cool wood of it, that the walls he had spent 3 years building around his life had just developed a crack, and the crack, he already suspected, was not going to heal. It was going to widen. The crack widened on a Thursday. It did not announce itself. That was the thing about the slow destruction of a careful life. It never announced itself. It came in through the side door. It came in through a phone call and a newspaper and a knock on the wrong neighbor's front door. And by the time Nolan Hayes understood what was happening to him, the walls he had spent 3 years building were already leaning, and all he could do was put his hands against them and feel the shift. The phone call came first. His mother, Pat Hayes, lived 2 hours west in a retirement community with a shared pool and too many pickleball courts, and she called him on Thursday afternoon at 4:15. He was in the shop. He had sawdust in his beard and the radio on low, and when the phone buzzed in his back pocket, he almost let it ring out because he was gluing up a panel, and it was the kind of job where you did not stop in the middle. But something made him look at the screen, and when he saw her name, he set the clamp down and wiped his hands and answered. "Hi, Ma." "Nolan?" "Hi, honey. Is this a bad time?" "It's always a bad time. You call me at weird hours. What's going on?" "Can you sit down?" He did not sit down. A person does not sit down when their mother says that. A person braces. "What? I'm fine. I want to say that first. I'm fine. But I got some test results back this morning, and there's something on my left lung that the doctor wants to take a closer look at." His mouth went dry. "What do you mean, something?" "A spot. That's what he called it, a spot. He's being careful. He said most of the time these things are nothing. But he wants me to come in for a biopsy next week, and I didn't want to tell you over the phone, but I also didn't want you to find out from your sister, who is already losing her mind, so..." "Ma, it's probably nothing." "Ma, stop. Just let me breathe for a second." "But..." He walked to the shop door. He opened it. He walked out into the cold October afternoon with the phone pressed hard against his ear, and he stood on the gravel path between the shop and the house and stared at the bare branches of the maple in the back corner of the yard. And he tried very hard to pretend that his heart was not doing what it was doing. 3 years ago, his father had died of a heart attack in a grocery store parking lot. 3 years ago, 7 months later, his wife had left. 3 years ago, he had come within one bad night of coming apart entirely. And the only thing that had kept him stitched together was the fact that a 2-year-old child could not raise herself and was counting on him to keep showing up. He had made a promise then, not to his mother, not to Lily, to himself. He had promised himself that he was not going to care about anything that could be taken from him again. He was going to love his daughter. He was going to work. He was going to keep the house standing. He was not going to build any new rooms onto his life that could be burned down. And now there was a woman next door who had been slowly, carefully picking the locks on every door he had bolted shut, and there was a spot on his mother's lung, and the universe, it turned out, had not gotten the memo about his promise. "When's the biopsy?" he said. "Tuesday." "I'll be there." "You don't have to..." "Ma, I'll be there." "What about Lily?" "I'll figure it out." "You always say that, and I always figure it out." She started crying. Not hard. Just a little. The quiet way she cried when she was trying not to let him hear it, and he stood in his backyard with his free hand against the cold siding of his house and let her cry, because there was nothing else he could do. And after a while she said she loved him, and he said he loved her too, and she hung up. He stood there for a long time after that. The shop door was still open. The radio was still on, playing something country and old. A squirrel moved in the maple. Somewhere across the fence he could hear Elena's back door close. The particular small slam it made, the slightly off-kilter sound of a house where the hinges were not quite hung right, and he did not turn and look. He could not. If he turned and looked, he was going to walk across the fence, and he was going to do something he was not ready to do, and then it was going to be one more thing to lose. He went inside. He picked Lily up from the after-school program. He made her macaroni and cheese because she had been asking for it for 3 days, and he did not have it in him to argue tonight. He did not tell her about her grandmother. He sat across the table from her while she invented elaborate stories about the lives of her noodles, and he smiled at the right moments, and he did not tell her anything. And when she went to bed at 8:30, he sat on the edge of her bed longer than he usually did and watched her fall asleep. Then he went downstairs and stood in the kitchen and did not cry, and he did not call Elena, and he did not do anything at all except exist, which on some nights, he was learning, was the hardest thing a person could do. The newspaper came Friday. The Maple County Gazette was a 12-page weekly, mostly obituaries and school lunch menus and a middle section that somebody's aunt ran called Around the Square. Nobody under the age of 40 read it. Everybody over the age of 40 read it with religious intensity, and they read it together, in diners and at church breakfasts and in the lobby of the single dentist in town, and the Around the Square column was the part that caused all the trouble. That Friday morning, on page 6, there was a photograph. It had been taken at the charity night. Nolan did not know who had taken it. Some volunteer with a camera, probably, or a staff photographer who'd been wandering the event for B-roll. It had been cropped tight. It showed two people kneeling on the edge of the stage in the warm yellow light of the Edison bulbs. One of them was Elena Brooks. One of them was him. His hand was on the side of her face. Her hair was caught behind her ear where he had just tucked it. They were both looking at each other as if the rest of the world had stopped mattering. The caption read in italics, "Local carpenter Nolan Hayes and new neighbor Elena Brooks share a moment during Saturday's food bank benefit." Cupid, it seems, was on the volunteer list. Nolan found out about the photograph because Mrs. Carver at the diner told him about it. He had gone in for coffee at 7. He did this most Fridays, a to-go cup, a quick nod at the cook, nothing more. He did not sit down. He did not engage. But that Friday, Mrs. Carver, who was 72 and had worked the register at the Maple Diner for 43 years, and who could kill a grown man with a single lifted eyebrow, slid the newspaper across the counter at him with the front page folded down and the page 6 photograph facing up, and she said, in a voice pitched to carry to the booth by the window,
"Well, Nolan, congratulations." He looked down. The photograph stared back, his hand on her face. "Who?" "Page 6, middle column. Cute caption. Who writes that, by the way? Is it still Doris? Doris always did have a streak." "Mrs. Carver." This is... The whole town's seen it, hun. I'm not telling you anything you won't hear 6 more times by lunch."
He closed the paper. He paid for his coffee. He left a larger tip than usual because he didn't know what else to do with his hands. He walked out of the diner into the cold morning with the paper rolled up under his arm, and he stood on the sidewalk for a minute and tried to get his breathing to slow down. And he thought, with a clarity that surprised him, this is going to cost me something. He did not know yet what. He drove home. He sat in his truck in his driveway for a long time. When he finally looked up, Elena was standing on her porch in a hoodie and pajama pants, holding a coffee cup, looking directly at his truck. She had a newspaper in her other hand. He rolled down his window. "You saw it," he said. "I saw it." "Okay. Are you? How are you?" "I don't know." "Yeah." "Come over," he said, before he could think about whether that was the right thing to say. She came over. She crossed the 2 lawns barefoot because she had not put shoes on, and she did not seem to notice the cold until she was halfway across, and even then she just made a small face and kept coming. She climbed into the passenger side of his truck because it was closer than the house, and she sat with the newspaper in her lap and the coffee cup clutched in both hands, and she did not say anything for a second. "Mrs. Carver told me," he said. "Mrs. Klein told me." "Who's Mrs. Klein?" "I don't know. She works at the post office. She smiled at me. She did that knowing smile. And I said hi, and she said, 'Oh, honey.' And then she pointed at the newspaper rack, and I went and looked, and yeah. She laughed a little. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh a person makes when they have run out of other responses to a situation, and he felt it in his chest the way he felt her laugh now, as a small landslide. "Is this a disaster?" she said. "It's not a disaster." "Is it not, though?" "It's just a photograph, Elena." "Nolan, look at it." He looked at it. She was right. It was not just a photograph. "It's a small town," he said finally. "I know. People talk. I know. They'll move on in a week. Will they?" He didn't answer because the truth was he didn't know. He knew how this town worked. He had lived here his whole life. He knew the way a piece of gossip,
once it got into the system, could move through the veins of the place for months, the way a splinter under the skin could sit there until it turned black. He had watched it happen to other people. He had, in the worst year of his life, been on the receiving end of it himself when his wife had left.
And the whispers had followed him for over a year, and he had never been so grateful for anything as he was for the moment they finally stopped.
And now here they were again. He could feel them starting. He could feel the shape of them coming. "Sorry," Elena said. "Don't. I'm the new person. I'm the one who—" "Elena, feel like I dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me anywhere. I climbed up on that stage with you." "Yeah, but I made you." "Lily made me." "Oh, so your daughter's the one who ruined your life. Got it. That's not what I said." "I know. I'm sorry. I'm doing the nervous thing." "I noticed."
She looked down at her hands. The coffee was steaming in the cold truck cab. Outside, a school bus pulled up at the corner, and Lily was running down the driveway with her backpack half-zipped and her shoelaces untied. And Nolan rolled the window up fast and lifted a hand, and Lily waved back and climbed onto the bus. And he watched her go and was grateful, for a small moment, that she was 6 and nobody was going to read her the Around the Square column over breakfast. "My mom called yesterday," he said. "Okay." "They found a spot on her lung. She has to go in for a biopsy on Tuesday. I have to drive out there." Elena's whole body turned toward him in the passenger seat. "Nolan, I don't know what it is. The doctor said it's probably nothing. He said most of the time these things are nothing. But I am not in a great place with the word, probably right now." "Yeah. I haven't told Lily." "You shouldn't, not until you know." "That's what I thought." "Who's watching her on Tuesday?" "I don't know. I was going to ask Janet up the street. Her kids go to the same school. But Janet's—" "I'll do it." "Elena, I'll do it. I work from home. I can rearrange some things. I'll pick her up from school, and I'll make her dinner, and I'll do her homework with her, and you go be with your mom, and you don't worry about it." That's a lot to ask." "You're not asking. I'm offering. There's a difference, Hayes." He did not have an answer for that. He looked down at the newspaper in her lap. He looked at the picture of his own hand on the side of her face, the picture that was at this moment being looked at by every person in this town who had a newspaper subscription and a working pair of eyes. And he thought, with the exhausted honesty of a man who had been up most of the night, that he did not care anymore. He did not care what the town thought. He did not care what Mrs. Carver said from behind the register at the diner, and he did not care what they put in Around the Square next week, and he did not care about any of it. What he cared about was the woman in the passenger seat of his truck, sitting there in her pajama pants with cold bare feet, who had just volunteered to watch his daughter so that he could sit in a hospital waiting room 2 hours away on Tuesday. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Thank you. You don't have to thank me." "I do, though." "Well," she looked out the windshield, "you're welcome." He wanted to say something else. He wanted to say the thing he'd been trying not to say for a week, the thing she'd told him to come find her about. But he looked at her face in the gray morning light, and he saw how tired she was, how careful, how aware of the weight of what was sitting between them, and he knew it was not the right moment. Not with his mother sick, not with the newspaper photograph sitting on her lap like evidence in a trial. He said, instead, "Go put shoes on. Your feet are going to fall off." She laughed. A real laugh this time, short and surprised. "Yeah," she said. "Okay." She got out of the truck. She walked back across the lawn in her bare feet. At her porch, she turned and looked back at him, and she lifted the newspaper in a small, ironic salute. And then she went inside, and Nolan sat in his truck with his hands on the wheel and his forehead against the cold edge of it, and breathed out the first full breath he'd taken since his mother had called. Tuesday came too fast and too slow. He drove the 2 hours out to his mother's town with the radio on and the windshield wipers going because a cold rain had rolled in overnight, and he got to the clinic 45 minutes early and sat in the parking lot and drank bad coffee out of a gas station cup and tried to remember how to pray, even though he had not prayed in years and did not believe in anything anymore that was big enough to hear him. He ended up just sitting with his hand on the steering wheel, silent, thinking about his mother's kitchen and his father, and the maple tree in the backyard of the house he'd grown up in, and all the other small anchored things of his early life that had turned out not to be permanent after all. The biopsy took an hour and change. He sat in the waiting room with a 2-year-old magazine about bass fishing and did not read it. He walked up and down the hallway. He answered a text from Lily that Elena had clearly dictated and then let Lily punctuate in her own way, which meant it had 30 exclamation points and a heart emoji and the words, "We are having grilled cheese," in all caps. His mother came out of the procedure pale and groggy and irritated, which was how he knew she was still herself. The doctor told them they would have results by Friday. The doctor was a kind-faced young man with tired eyes who had clearly given this speech 100 times. His mother patted the doctor's hand and told him to take a day off, and the doctor laughed, and Nolan, watching his mother be his mother, felt something loosen in his chest for the first time in 4 days. He got her back to the retirement community. He made her soup. He sat on the couch with her until she fell asleep in her recliner with the television on low, and then he kissed her on the top of her head the way she had kissed him on the top of his head when he was a boy, and he got in his truck and drove the 2 hours home in the dark. He pulled into his driveway at almost 11. The house was dim. The porch light was on. Elena's porch light was on across the fence. He got out of the truck slowly, all his bones heavier than they had been that morning, and he climbed the steps and opened his front door. Lily was asleep on the couch with her head in Elena's lap. Elena had a book open. She was running a slow hand over Lily's hair the way you do when you are not quite thinking about it. She looked up when the door opened, and her face moved through 3 different expressions in a fraction of a second: relief, concern, something he did not have a name for, and then she held up her free hand and made a small shushing motion. He nodded. He closed the door as quietly as he could. "How'd it go?" she whispered. "Results Friday. She's okay for now."
Okay. How was she?
"Good. She did all her homework. She lost her mind about the math again. We made a cake out of a box." "A cake?" "It's on the kitchen counter. Don't look at it too hard." "Elena, it's lopsided. The recipe is a liar. Don't judge me." He sat down on the arm of the couch. He looked at his sleeping daughter. Lily's hand was fisted in the sleeve of Elena's sweater. Her mouth was slightly open. A small line of drool had formed at the corner of it, which Nolan knew from experience meant she was deep asleep and was going to stay that way for a while. "I'll carry her up," he said. "Okay." He did. He came back down. Elena was standing in the living room with her coat already on, her bag over her shoulder, trying to look like a person who had been about to leave anyway, and not a person who had just spent 6 hours in somebody else's house parenting a child who was not hers. "I should stay a second," she stopped. "Okay. Just a second." "Okay." They stood there in the living room. He was too tired to find the right words. He was too tired to find the wrong words. He just stood there. And she stood there, and she put her bag down slowly on the arm of a chair, like she was afraid any sudden movement would change his mind. "I didn't know what I wanted to say," he said finally. "When I got home, I drove 2 hours thinking about it, and I still don't know. I'm not good at this. I know. I've been trying to keep my life small since a long time. Since before I moved to this street. I have very specific rules I made for myself about what I was going to allow, and you have broken every single one of them. I didn't mean to. No, don't. It's not a complaint. I'm trying to tell you something." "Okay." When my mother called on Thursday, the first thing I thought was, don't tell Elena. The second thing I thought was, I need to tell Elena. And the second thought won, and I don't know what to do with that because I do not let people in, Elena. I do not. And you are in. You are already in. I don't know how that happened. I don't know when it happened. But it happened, and I can't undo it, and I don't want to undo it." She did not say anything. He could hear her breathing. He could hear his own heart, which seemed suddenly very loud in the silent living room. "I'm not going to kiss you tonight," he said, "because I'm exhausted, and I smell like hospital coffee, and I don't want this to be a bad kiss because I was tired, but I want you to know that I'm ready. I'm not sure of anything else in my life right now, but I'm sure of that." She laughed. It was small and wet, and it broke at the end. "That's my line," she said. "The not kissing you line." "I know. I'm using it." "I know. Nolan." Yeah. Come here. He came. She did not kiss him. She did what he had not expected. She put her arms around him and she held on to him, tight, with her forehead pressed to the collar of his shirt. And she did not say anything, and after a second he put his arms around her too, awkwardly at first, and then properly, and he held her in his own living room with his sleeping daughter upstairs, and he let himself feel, for the first time in 3 years, what it was like to be touched by a person who was not a small child or a polite acquaintance or a stranger at a hardware store counter. It broke something in him. He had not known it was still there to break. She pulled back finally. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. She smiled at him in a way that was not playful, not teasing, just tired and open and a little bit afraid. "I'm going home," she said. "Okay." "Text me when she wakes up." "Okay." "Friday. When you hear about your mom." "Okay." "Good night, Nolan." "Good night, Elena." She left. He stood in the middle of the living room for a long minute. Then he went upstairs and stood in the doorway of Lily's bedroom and watched his daughter sleep. He went to his own room and got into bed and did not turn the light on. And he lay there in the dark and felt, for the first time in a long time, not peace, but something near it, something close enough. Wednesday, he got through on muscle memory. Thursday, the same. He worked. He picked Lily up. He made dinner. He answered a text from Elena about a recipe. He did not go over. Friday morning at 10:45, his mother called. "Benign," she said. He had to sit down on the floor of the shop. "Say it again." "Benign, honey. It's benign." The doctor just called. He was almost laughing. He said he should have known. He said these almost never turn out to be anything, but he's cautious and... "Nolan, honey, are you there? I'm here. You crying?" "No. You're crying." "I'm not." "That's all right. I'm crying too." He sat on the floor of his shop with sawdust in the knees of his jeans and his phone pressed to his ear, and for the first time since Thursday of the week before, he felt like he could stand up without the ground moving under him. He called Elena. She picked up on the second ring. "She's okay," he said, before she could even say hello. "My mom. It's benign. She's okay." There was a breath on the other end of the line. "Oh, thank everything, Nolan. Oh my, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Where are you?" "The shop." Come over right now." "I'm coming." He hung up. He stood up. He walked across the 2 lawns with sawdust still on his jeans, and he did not knock, because Elena had told him weeks ago that he never had to knock, and he pushed open her back door, and she was standing in her kitchen with a dish towel over one shoulder and her hair down, and she turned when she heard him come in, and she was already laughing and already crying at the same time. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, and this time he did kiss her. He did kiss her, and he did not apologize for it, and he did not think about it, and he did not factor it through the careful machinery he had built for the last 3 years, because the machinery was gone. The machinery had broken down on the floor of his shop when his mother had said benign. The machinery had been dying for weeks, and he kissed her with his hands on either side of her face and her hands gripping the front of his flannel shirt. And it was not a clean kiss, and it was not a graceful kiss, and it was not the kind of kiss that got written about in books. It was the kind of kiss a person gave when they had almost lost someone they loved and had remembered, in the almost losing, how much there was still to hold on to. When they pulled apart, Elena was laughing into his shoulder. You smell like sawdust," she said. "I'm sorry." No, I like it. I'm telling you, I like it." "Okay." "I'm saying it's a compliment." "Got it." "Say something, Nolan." "I don't know what to say." "Say something anyway." He thought about it. He thought about his mother and Lily and 3 years of keeping the door bolted and the newspaper photograph and Mrs. Carver at the diner and every whisper that had already started moving through town and every one that was still coming. He thought about how tired he was and how much he did not want to lose this and how close he had come to never having it. "I'm tired of being scared," he said finally. "I'm tired of it. I'm 40 years old in 8 years, and I have spent the last 3 of them acting like my life was already over, and it's not. It is not. And I don't know what this is, Elena. I don't know where it goes. I don't have a map for it, but I'm not going to do the thing I was going to do, which was talk myself out of it. I'm not doing that. Not this time." She pressed her forehead to his. Good, she said. Good? Good, Hayes, that's all I was waiting for. He did not know yet about the man in the gray suit from the downtown firm. He did not know that on Tuesday of the following week, that man was going to knock on Elena Brooks' front door with a job offer in a manila folder, a job offer 3 hours away, in a city she had left for a reason, at a salary she could not reasonably turn down, and that the small, fragile, hard-won thing he was holding in his hands at that very moment in her kitchen was about to be tested in a way neither of them was prepared for. He only knew, as he stood there with her forehead against his and her hands still fisted in his shirt, and the dish towel slipping off her shoulder onto the kitchen floor, that he had finally, after 3 years, let somebody back in. And he knew, too, that the part of him that had been keeping careful watch over his own heart had gone quiet, at last. It had not gone away. It would never go away entirely. But it had gone quiet, for the first time in a long time, and in that quiet, for a few minutes on a Friday morning in late October, Nolan Hayes was not a widower of a broken marriage, and not a man with a spot on his mother's lung, and not the subject of the Around the Square column on page 6 of the Maple County Gazette. He was just a man in a woman's kitchen, holding on. The quiet held for 4 days, 4 good days. 4 days of Nolan Hayes waking up and not reaching for his phone the first second he opened his eyes to make sure nothing had fallen apart overnight. 4 days of walking out to the shop in the morning with his coffee and finding that the radio sounded different, a little clearer, the country stations he'd been listening to for 15 years, suddenly full of lyrics he thought he'd understood before but apparently had not. 4 days of Lily coming downstairs in the mornings and looking at him over her cereal bowl with the shrewd, silent expression of a child who had noticed something had shifted and was biding her time before asking about it. 4 days of Elena. Of Elena on his porch at 6 in the evening in one of her flannel shirts. Of Elena at his kitchen table with a glass of wine while he grilled cheese sandwiches for the 3 of them because he could not, it turned out, actually cook very much else. Of Elena kissing him quickly in the hallway while Lily was brushing her teeth upstairs, and then stepping back fast when they heard Lily's bare feet on the landing, like 2 teenagers getting away with something. Lily, for what it was worth, had figured it out by the second day. "Are you and Miss Elena in love now?" She asked it on the way home from school on Monday afternoon, riding in the passenger seat with her backpack on her lap and her feet swinging 6 inches above the floor mat. She had apparently been holding the question for a while. She asked it the same way she asked about anything big, with a very calm voice and a slightly too careful posture, like she understood on some level that the question was a big one and that the person she was asking might startle. Nolan kept his eyes on the road. "What makes you ask that, kid?" "You held her hand in the kitchen last night, when you thought I went upstairs. You saw that. I came back down for my water." "Right." So, he thought about it. He thought about lying. He thought about deflecting. He thought about all the ways a father of a 6-year-old girl could take a question like that and turn it into something smaller. And then he thought about Elena's face on Friday morning in her kitchen, and he thought about the 3 years he had spent pretending, and he took a breath. "Yeah, Lil, I think we might be." "Good. That's all you're going to say." "That's all I'm going to say." "Since when are you a person of few words?" "Since now." She turned to look out the window. She was smiling the small private smile of a general whose battle plans had gone exactly as expected. And Nolan shook his head, and they drove the rest of the way home in a silence that was not uncomfortable, but warm. Then came Tuesday. He was in the shop when it happened. He didn't see it. He only heard about it later, from Elena, sitting at his kitchen table at 9 o'clock that night with both her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She was not drinking, her voice very flat, her eyes somewhere behind him on the wall. A man had knocked on her door at 4:30 in the afternoon. Gray suit, silver watch, a leather portfolio under one arm. He'd introduced himself as Curtis Granger from Haldane and Webb, a downtown firm 3 hours away in the city she had left the year before, and he had asked, politely, if she had 5 minutes to talk about an offer. She had let him in. She had made him coffee. She had sat across from him at her own kitchen table and listened, and she had gotten quieter and quieter as he'd gone through the folder. It was a senior position, a jump of 2 titles from where she'd been when she left. A salary that was not, she told Nolan, a salary so much as a correction. The kind of number you offered somebody when you needed to win them back and you had been authorized to do whatever it took. a corner office, a team of 6. The kind of work she had actually gone to school to do, the kind she had walked away from a year ago because the man she had been with at the time had made her life there impossible to keep living in, and she had decided at 29 that no job was worth what staying had cost her. Curtis Granger had sat at her kitchen table for 45 minutes. He had told her that the man in question was no longer at the firm. He had told her that everyone involved had been held accountable. He had told her that the offer was open for 2 weeks, and that he was not going to pretend there was no pressure, because there was, but that he would like her answer sooner rather than later. He had left his card on her counter. He had shaken her hand. He had gone, and she had sat at her table for a long time after that, looking at the folder, and then she had closed it, and she had walked the 150 feet across the 2 lawns to Nolan's back door, and now she was here. She finished telling him. She put the mug down. She did not look up. Nolan did not say anything for a minute. "Okay," he said finally. "That's your first word." "I'm processing." "Process faster, Hayes. I'm coming apart over here." "Elena." "I'm kidding. Half kidding. I don't know. Nolan, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. I ran away from that place. I told myself I was never. I said those exact words. I said, I am never going back. And now it's sitting in a manila folder on my counter, and the number is life-changing, and I don't stop. What? Breathe. I am breathing. You're panic breathing, actual breathing, in and out, slow. She laughed. It came out shaky. She did what he said. She breathed. He watched her breathe, and he felt, behind his sternum, a cold, small, familiar thing beginning to wake up, and he did not let it onto his face. Not yet. Not here. Not when she needed him to be steady. "Do you want it?" he said. "That's the wrong question." "Do you, though?" "Nolan, that's not fair." "It is fair. It's the only fair question." She looked down at the mug. She turned it slowly in her hands. "I wanted it a year ago," she said. "I wanted that job so badly. A year ago, I could have tasted it. I worked for that job. I was good at that job, Nolan. I was really good at it. And then everything happened with Derek, and I left, and I told myself I was fine leaving, and I was fine leaving. I was fine. I am fine. But the part of me that wanted the job didn't die. It just got quiet. And this afternoon, I heard it wake back up, and I hate that I heard it." "Why do you hate it?" "Because..." She stopped. She closed her eyes. "Because I don't want to want it anymore." "But you do." "Yeah." Okay. That's real. That's important. I needed to know that." He stood up. He went to the stove and turned the burner off under the kettle that had long since stopped whistling. He did it mostly to have something to do with his hands. When he turned back around, she was watching him with the guarded expression of a person who was waiting to find out how much damage had just been done. He sat back down. "You should take the weekend with it," he said. "Don't make a decision tonight. Don't make a decision tomorrow. Think about it." "Nolan, let me finish. I'm trying to say the right thing here, and I'm not good at this, so let me say it." "Okay. If you want this job, you should take it. I mean that. I'm not going to be the guy who stands in the way of a thing you wanted. I'm not going to do that to you. The last 3 years of my life have been built on the assumption that every good thing gets taken away eventually, and I'm not going to pass that down to you. I'm not going to make you small to keep you here." "Nolan, let me..." "No, you let me. You're doing the thing." "What thing?" "You're doing the thing where you're trying to be noble so you don't have to be honest. I know that voice, Hayes. I've heard it twice. I'm not doing it this time." "Elena, tell me how you actually feel." He could not look at her. "Tell me." He looked at the table. He ran his thumb along the grain of it. He had built this table 4 years ago out of reclaimed oak from a barn his uncle had torn down, and he had sanded it down to glass. And he had put 6 coats of finish on it, and Lily had eaten her breakfast at it every morning of her life for as long as she could remember. He kept his eyes on the grain. He spoke slowly. "I don't want you to go." "Thank you." "I don't want you to go, Elena. I don't want to do this again. I was doing okay. I was. I had my system. I had the house. I had Lily. I had my shop. I had my mother on the phone every Sunday, and I had a life, and it wasn't a full life, but it was a life I could keep. And then you moved in next door, and Lily fell in love with you in 11 days, and I fell in love with you in some amount of time I am not going to say out loud because it's embarrassing. And now you're sitting at my kitchen table telling me there's a folder on your counter from a city 3 hours away. And the thing I'm feeling, Elena, is the exact same thing I felt the night my wife told me she was leaving, which is that I am about to lose another person, and I do not know how to survive that twice. She did not say anything. Her eyes were full. So that's the honest version, he said. That's the one you asked for. I'm not saying it to guilt you. I'm saying it because you asked. If you want the job, you take the job. If you stay because you want to stay, not because I begged you. That's all. That's all I've got. She breathed out. It sounded like it cost her something. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, Nolan. She stood up. She walked around the table. She put her hands on his shoulders, and she pressed her forehead to the top of his head, and he closed his eyes, and they stayed like that for a long minute. And neither of them said anything, and the kitchen clock ticked, and somewhere upstairs Lily rolled over in her sleep and said something unintelligible into her pillow. I'm going home, Elena said. Okay. I'm not going home as in going home. I'm going home as in my house tonight. I need to think. I need to sit with it. Okay? I love you. She said it fast. She said it like she had been holding it for longer than she wanted to admit, and had decided in that kitchen that she was not going to keep holding it. He opened his eyes. He looked up at her. I love you, he said. She smiled. It was a small, wet smile. She kissed him once, on the forehead, and she left by the back door, and she did not look back because she was not going to. And Nolan sat at the table with the cold mug of tea and the oat grain under his thumb, and he sat there until almost midnight. The town started talking 2 days later. It started predictably at the diner. Somebody who worked at the post office had noticed Curtis Granger's rental car with out-of-county plates parked in front of Elena's house on Tuesday for an hour. Somebody else had seen him come out of her front door in a gray suit. Somebody else had looked up the firm on the internet and mentioned to Mrs. Carver at the diner that it was a big firm in the city and that the woman next door to Nolan Hayes seemed to be receiving visitors of a professional nature. And by Thursday it had become, in the shape of the gossip that Nolan knew so well, the story of the new neighbor who had never really planned to stay. He heard pieces of it in the hardware store. He heard pieces of it at the gas station. He heard a full accounting of it from Dale at the lumber yard, who did not know he was standing there and who said to somebody on the other end of a phone call, loud enough to carry, that he had heard the carpenter's new girlfriend was already looking at moving back to the city and that they were placing bets on when it was going to fall apart. Nolan left the lumber yard without buying what he had come for. He sat in his truck in the parking lot with his hands on the wheel, and for the first time in a week, the cold, small thing behind his sternum was not small anymore. It was large. It was a living thing. It was the same thing that had lived there for 3 years and that had gone quiet on Friday in Elena's kitchen, and it had been awake since Tuesday, and now it was snarling. He drove home. He did not go over to her house. He did not call. She texted him that night. She said, "Can I come over tomorrow after Lily's asleep?" He wrote back, "Yes," that was all. She came Friday at 9. She knocked on his back door. He let her in. Lily was upstairs and the dishwasher was running, and the house had that particular Friday night stillness of a small family that had survived another week. Elena did not take her coat off. "I'm not taking the job," she said. He stared at her. "I'm not. I called Curtis this afternoon. I told him no. I told him I appreciated the offer and I meant it, but it's not what I want anymore. I told him not to send me a counter. I was pretty clear." Elena. Elena, you don't have to. I didn't do it for you." "What?" "I didn't do it for you. I want to be very clear about that. I thought about it for 3 days. I sat with it. I wrote down pros and cons like a crazy person. I called my sister. I did not sleep. And at some point yesterday afternoon, I was sitting at my kitchen table, and I realized the whole time I was thinking about whether to take the job, I wasn't thinking about the job. I was thinking about what it would feel like to leave this street. I was thinking about what it would feel like to pack my boxes back up. I was thinking about what it would be like to stand in the driveway on a Saturday morning and look at your house across the fence and know I was never going to go through that gate again. And I realized the job wasn't the thing. You were the thing. Lily was the thing. This street was the thing. And then I called Curtis. Elena, I don't want you to feel guilty. I want that on the record. I did not do this because you asked me to. You didn't ask me to. You did the noble guy thing, and you told me to take the job, which, by the way, I almost left you over. That was the worst speech I have ever heard. I know. But you didn't ask me to stay. I stayed because I wanted to. Elena. What? He crossed the kitchen. He put his hands on either side of her face. He looked at her. You could have taken the job, he said. I was ready. I was going to survive it. I know you were. I wanted you to know that. I know. I wanted you to know that I wasn't asking you to give up a thing for me. I know. You didn't, that's why. He kissed her. This one was not like the one in her kitchen on Friday morning the week before. That one had been a release, an opening, the sound of a lock giving way after a long time being stuck. This one was a promise. This one was the kind of kiss a person gave when they had been given something they did not think they would ever receive, and they were acknowledging that they had received it. When they pulled apart, she was laughing a little. What? He said. Nothing. I'm just thinking about Curtis. He was so mad. Was he? He was so polite about being mad. It was beautiful. I have never heard a man be so gracious while wanting to throw a chair. I bet. He said, and I quote, he said, Miss Brooks, I hope you will reconsider. And I said, and I quote, I said, Mr. Granger, I will not. You sound pleased with yourself. I am very pleased with myself. He held her for another long minute. He held her standing in his kitchen with the dishwasher running and his daughter asleep upstairs and the cold thing behind his sternum gone quiet again. And he knew that the cold thing was never going to go away entirely, and he knew that there were going to be other Curtis Grangers, in one shape or another, for the rest of his life, because that was what a real life was. It kept presenting new versions of the same old fear, and you kept walking through them. But he knew now that he was capable of walking through them. He had the next 4 months to prove it. They did not happen fast. That was the thing. They did not rush. Elena gave notice on her apartment lease 2 months out, because her lease was up in February anyway, and the two of them agreed, out loud, at his kitchen table on a Saturday morning in November, with Lily pretending not to eavesdrop from the living room, that she was not going to move into his house. Not yet. Not until it was right. Not until Lily had adjusted. Not until they had done the slow work of deciding whether they actually fit together every day, as opposed to a few evenings a week. She rented a small place 3 blocks over, starting in March. It had a second bedroom and a yard Lily liked. She moved her things in over a weekend. Nolan helped. Lily insisted on carrying the cardboard box labeled kitchen, fragile. No, seriously, which she did with the solemnity of a child who understood she was being entrusted with something important. She did not drop it. She was very proud of herself. They did not set a label on what they were. They did not have to. The town had already done that for them, and after about 4 weeks, the town had gotten bored and moved on to a story about somebody's cousin in Millerton who had been caught selling antique clocks that were not actually antique, and Nolan and Elena were allowed finally to exist without being a topic. His mother came to visit in February. She stayed 4 days. She met Elena on the second day, over dinner at Nolan's house. Elena burned the first batch of biscuits. His mother laughed until she cried, not at Elena, but with her. And when Nolan drove his mother to the train station on the 4th morning, his mother had said, as she was getting out of the truck, "She's good, Nolan. She's a good one. Don't you mess this up." And Nolan had said, "I'm going to try not to." And his mother had said, "Try harder than that." He tried harder than that. There were fights. There were real fights. The way there are always real fights when two adults with their own histories try to build something shared. They argued about how to handle Lily. Elena had opinions. Elena had always had opinions. And Elena was not always right. And sometimes Nolan had to be the one to say so. And sometimes she had to hear it. They argued about how much of her mail she was leaving at his house.
They had a bad fight in early April about a family dinner with his sister that had gone sideways, where his sister had asked Elena, in that cheerful, sharp-edged way she had, whether Elena and Nolan were planning to have kids of their own, and Elena had gone very still, and the dinner had not recovered.
They had fought about it in the car on the way home. They had fought about it on the sidewalk outside of Nolan's house. They had fought about it long enough that Lily, who was not in the car, called Nolan from Elena's phone, which Elena had left inside, to ask when Elena was coming in because they had been outside a really long time and the spaghetti was getting cold. They had come inside. They had eaten spaghetti. They had apologized to each other later at 9 at night, standing in Nolan's kitchen, Elena with her arms wrapped tight around herself and Nolan with his hands in his back pockets. And neither of them had said the perfect thing, because neither of them ever said the perfect thing, but they had said true things, and that was, it turned out, what a real relationship was. Two people being willing to say true things even when the true things did not flatter them. Lily was the constant. Lily, all through that winter and into the spring, was the center that held. She had opinions about Elena's hair. She had opinions about Elena's cooking. She demanded that Elena come to her school play in December, in which Lily had been cast as a tree, a role she took extremely seriously and which she rehearsed for weeks in the living room with Mr. Bunny as her audience. Elena came. Elena brought flowers for a 6-year-old tree, which Lily carried home in her small fist with enormous dignity. And Nolan had watched the two of them on the sidewalk outside the school and had felt, for the first time since the night of the charity event, that the life he had been trying to build for his daughter might actually be the one she got. By May, Elena had a drawer at his house. By June, Elena had a key. And sometime in the second week of June, sitting on his back porch in the evening with a glass of wine, while Lily caught fireflies in a mason jar in the yard, Elena had said, half joking, that she could see this being her life. And Nolan had taken a long pull of his beer, and he had looked at her in the blue late spring dusk. And he had said, not joking at all, I can see that too. She had looked at him. She had not said anything. She had just reached across the porch step and taken his hand, and they had watched Lily run back and forth across the dimming yard with her mason jar, and they had sat there a long time, not talking, and Nolan had thought, very quietly, that a man in his situation, a man with his history, who had been given this much, a daughter, a woman, a quiet evening, a yard full of fireflies, was a man who had better not waste it. He had something he had been thinking about. He had been thinking about it since March. He had been thinking about it, if he was honest, since the night of the charity event, though he had not been willing to name it back then. He had been carrying it with him for months, folded up small in the back of his mind, the way a man carries a letter he has not decided yet whether to send. He was going to do something about it. Not tonight. Not yet. He wanted it to be right. He wanted the timing to be his, for once, not forced on him by a newspaper photograph or a phone call from his mother or a man in a gray suit with a folder. He wanted to pick a day and a place and a moment, and he wanted to walk into it on his own 2 feet. He was thinking already about the town square. He was thinking about the Edison bulbs and the plywood stage and the folding chairs, and he was thinking about Elena in a navy blue dress under her coat, and he was thinking about how far the two of them had walked from that night, and how the same square where everything had cracked open for them could, in a different season, be the place where it was set into something permanent. He had 10 weeks until the next charity event. He had time to do it right. He finished his beer. Elena took a sip of her wine. Lily, in the yard, screamed in triumph about a firefly and held the mason jar up to the porch light to show them, and the firefly, unimpressed, blinked twice and went still against the glass. "Careful with it, Lil," Nolan called. "Let it breathe." "I am." "Loosen the lid." "I know, Dad." Elena laughed. She leaned over. She put her head on his shoulder. He kept her hand in his. He was not going to waste it, not any of it, not this time. 10 weeks turned into 11, because Nolan was the kind of man who kept adjusting the plan, and because a 6-year-old co-conspirator, it turned out, had opinions. He had told Lily in the second week of July, sitting on the edge of her bed at bedtime, in the lowest voice he knew how to use. He had thought about whether to tell her at all. He had thought about it for a long time. In the end, he decided she deserved to know, because it was her life too, because she was, for better or worse, the first person who had ever opened the door for Elena, and because it did not feel right to walk into a thing that big without her. She had sat up fast when he told her. She had not said anything for a second. Then she had thrown herself into his chest and hugged him so hard he had lost his breath a little, and she had said against his shirt, "Does she know yet?" "No, don't tell her. I wasn't going to." "I mean it, Dad." "Lily, do not tell her." "I'm not telling her." "Can I pick my dress?" "Yeah, kid." "Can it be a new dress?" "It can be a new dress." "Can I help you?" "Help me how?" "I don't know yet. I'll think about it." She had thought about it. For 11 weeks, she had approached him in the kitchen in early August with a small piece of folded paper in her hand and a very serious expression on her face. And the paper had, in her best 6-year-old handwriting, a list of 6 ideas, 3 of which were unworkable, one of which involved balloons that Nolan was not going to allow under any circumstance, and 2 of which were quietly perfect. He used both. The charity event fell on the 3rd Saturday of September, the way it did every year. Elena did not know he had bought the ring. She did not know that his sister had been holding it since July in the lockbox on the top shelf of her hall closet, because Nolan had not trusted himself not to check on it if it was in his house. She did not know that his mother had flown in Thursday and was staying in a hotel on the edge of town so that Elena would not see her car. She did not know that Lily had picked her dress 2 months ago and had been practicing her part in front of the bathroom mirror on nights she thought nobody could hear her. Elena knew only that they were going to the charity event. She knew that Lily had decided this was going to be a night, with that particular 6-year-old emphasis that made it a proper noun. She had put on the navy dress. It was the same dress she'd worn the year before, and Nolan had noticed that it was the same dress, and he had not said anything about it, because he was not going to spoil it. They walked into the square at 7. It looked exactly the way it had looked a year ago. Strings of Edison bulbs, folding tables, the bluegrass band tuning up on the same small plywood stage. The mayor in the same sweater vest arguing with somebody about extension cords. A year, 1 whole year, had gone by, and the square had not changed, which was the thing about small towns, and the thing about lives that had changed underneath them. The world stayed the same, and you became a different person inside it. Elena stopped on the sidewalk and looked at the lights. "I have a weird feeling," she said. "Weird how?" "Déjà vu weird." "It's the same event." I know it's the same event. I keep thinking about last year." "Yeah." "Do you?" "All the time." She looked over at him. He kept his face very still. Somewhere in his chest, a marching band was tuning up, but his face, he was almost certain, was still. Lily had run ahead. Lily was, in fact, running ahead for a specific reason, which was that Lily had a job tonight, and Lily was not going to blow it. She had crossed the square to where Elena's cousin, Rick, the same cousin Rick from last year, was waiting with the microphone in his hand because Rick was the head of the food bank volunteer committee this year, a promotion Nolan had been, shall we say, very encouraging about. The bluegrass band finished a song. The mayor stepped back from the microphone. Rick took his place. "All right, folks," Rick said. He cleared his throat. He had practiced this. He had practiced this for 2 weeks in his truck on the way to work, and Nolan could tell because Rick was not a natural performer. "We got a little something before we get started tonight, sort of a tradition. You may remember last year we did a couples challenge. It was a hit, in the sense that nobody got hurt, which around here we count as a hit. This year we figured we'd do something a little different." Elena's hand tightened around Nolan's. "What's happening?" she whispered. "I don't know." "You're lying to me." "Am I?" Nolan, what is happening?" "Watch," Rick continued. "Now last year, on this same stage, a little girl sitting in the front row saw 2 people up here doing an obstacle course with their eyes closed, and I am told by a very reliable source, that she called it before anybody else did. She'd like to say a few words. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Miss Lily Hayes." The crowd laughed and clapped because they thought it was a joke. Then Lily walked up the 2 wooden steps onto the plywood stage, in her new dress. A green dress, because she had insisted, because green had been the dress she wore a year ago, and because she had a sense of ceremony that surprised him. And she stood on her tiptoes to reach the microphone, and the square went very quiet. Elena made a small, sharp sound next to him. "Oh," she said. "Oh no, oh Nolan. Watch." Nolan, what is this? Elena, watch her. Lily leaned into the microphone. Hi, she said. The square laughed. I'm Lily, she said. I'm 7. My birthday was in March. I have a note. She pulled a folded piece of paper out of the little pocket of her dress. She unfolded it. She had practiced this. She had practiced this, Nolan knew, so many times in front of the bathroom mirror that he had been able to hear the muffled rhythm of it through the door at night. And she had still insisted on bringing the paper, because she was 7 and she was not taking any chances. A year ago, Lily read carefully, my dad came up here with Miss Elena. They did the blindfold thing. My dad caught her before she fell. I saw it from the front row. I knew then. She paused. She looked up from the paper. Her small face was flushed. I knew then, she said again, not reading, just saying it, that he loved her. Elena's hand was trembling in Nolan's. Lily went back to the paper. My dad has been by himself for a long time. He was by himself when it was just me. He said that was enough. But then Miss Elena came over for cookies and she taught me that butter has to be cold. And she came to my school play when I was a tree, and she let me pick the music in her car, and she is my friend. She is also my dad's friend. But she is my friend first because I picked her first. The crowd was laughing. Also, unmistakably, people were crying. Nolan could hear it. A woman behind him was sniffling. Mrs. Carver, somewhere in the back, had stopped pretending to ring up baked goods at the bake sale table and was just watching with her hand over her mouth. Lily folded the paper. She looked out into the crowd. She found her father's face. She found Elena's face. She took a breath. Miss Elena, she said, can you come up here? Elena did not move. Miss Elena, Lily said again, patient. It's okay. Elena's head turned very slowly toward Nolan. Nolan, she whispered, go. Nolan, go on, Elena. You are a dead man, Hayes. Probably. She walked up the steps. Her legs were not steady. Lily took her hand and pulled her gently to the center of the plywood, under the strings of Edison bulbs, in exactly the same spot where Nolan had caught her a year ago, and the crowd made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a held breath. Nolan followed her up. He had not planned to do it this way. He had planned to be steadier. He had planned, in his head, to walk up there with the poise of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. But his hands were shaking, and his heart was doing something inappropriate in his chest. And when he got to the top of the steps and saw Elena standing under the lights with her eyes full and Lily's hand in hers, he understood that steadiness had never been part of this. Steadiness was not what he had to offer. What he had to offer was the truth. He took Elena's other hand. Nolan, she said, Nolan, what are you doing? Just let me get through this, okay? Let me get through this, okay? Elena. Yeah. A year ago we stood right here. Yeah. And I caught you, and I tucked your hair behind your ear, and I did not sleep that night because I knew something had happened to me, and I spent the next month pretending it hadn't. I know. I was scared. I know. I'm still scared, a little. I want to be honest. I want to be honest about this in front of all these people, because I am not a man who knows how to lie gracefully, and I do not want to start tonight. I was scared a year ago, and I am a little scared now, and I think I am going to be scared for the rest of my life, because the thing about loving somebody is that you are signing up to be scared of losing them every single day until one of you dies. That is the deal. That is what it is. I used to think the smart thing was to not take the deal. I used to think the smart thing was to keep my life small so there was nothing to lose. He took a breath. I was wrong. Elena was crying, not loudly, quietly, the way she cried, with her mouth pressed shut and her shoulders very still, and Nolan's throat was doing something that was going to become a problem if he did not keep moving. I thought the biggest risk of my life was going to be falling for you, he said. Turns out it wasn't. Turns out the biggest risk would have been almost letting you go. And I almost did. Last October, with that folder on your counter, I almost did the exact thing I've been doing my whole life, which was to talk myself out of the best thing in front of me because I was too tired to be brave. And you stayed anyway. You stayed anyway, and you loved me through it. And you love my daughter through it. And I don't have a lot to give you, Elena. I'm a carpenter in a small town. I'm not anybody's idea of a catch, but I can give you this. I can promise you that I am not going to waste another day of whatever I have left. I'm not going to be careful with this. Not anymore. He reached into his jacket pocket. The square had gone so quiet he could hear the wind in the string lights. Elena Brooks. Nolan, oh my. Elena Brooks, will you marry me? He held out the ring. It was not a flashy ring. It had been his grandmother's, reset by a jeweler 2 towns over, and it was small and old and plain, and it was, he knew, exactly the kind of ring she would have picked if anyone had asked her. His hand was not steady. He was not going to pretend it was. Elena looked at the ring. She looked at him. She looked at Lily, who was standing between them holding both their hands, beaming, the folded piece of paper still clutched in her small fist. Yes, Elena said. Yes, you idiot. Yes. The square broke open. Applause and people shouting, and somebody at the bake sale table actually putting her fingers in her mouth and whistling, and the bluegrass band, who had apparently been in on it. Nolan did not know for sure, but he suspected strongly, striking up the first bars of something cheerful and fast. Elena threw her arms around his neck. He slid the ring onto her finger and discovered, to his own surprise, that his hands were steadier now than they had been a minute before. The way a man's hands sometimes are once the worst part is over. Lily wedged herself between their knees and hugged them both at once. A 3-person tangle in the middle of a plywood stage under 1,000 Edison bulbs. And for a long time, none of them could have said a coherent sentence if they had been asked. His mother, it turned out, had come. She had been standing in the back the whole time. She walked up to them after, in the crowd, and did not say anything at all. She was not a woman who needed to. She just put her hand on Elena's cheek and pressed her forehead to Elena's for a second, and Elena closed her eyes. And Nolan, watching the 2 women on either side of him, understood that his life had, at some point in the last 12 months, become a different shape than the one he had been carrying around. It took a long time to get off the square. Everyone wanted to say something. Mrs. Carver from the diner, who had handed him the newspaper on a cold Friday morning a year ago and called him Hon in a voice pitched to Carrie, was the first to reach them, and she hugged Elena and did not say anything, and only patted Nolan's shoulder once on the way out of the hug. And that, from Mrs. Carver, was the kind of thing a man remembered. Dale from the lumberyard was there. Janet from up the street, the librarian, the woman from the post office whose name Elena still did not know. It was the whole town, or enough of the town that it felt like the whole town, and Nolan, who had spent 3 years trying to make himself invisible in these same streets, let himself be seen. They walked home at almost 11. Lily had fallen asleep at some point, somewhere between the bake sale and the bandstand, and Nolan carried her over his shoulder the way he had the year before, her legs dangling, Mr. Bunny, older now, one ear coming loose at the seam, tucked under her arm. Elena walked beside him, her ring hand tucked into the crook of his elbow, and neither of them said anything for a block, because neither of them needed to. At the crack in the sidewalk where her walk had once diverged from his, she stopped. "This is the spot," she said. "What spot?" "This is where we said goodnight last year. I remember this crack. I remember thinking I was going to lose my mind all the way home." "Me too." "Did you know?" "Know what?" "That we were going to end up here." He thought about it. He thought about the woman in one rain boot arguing with a raccoon. He thought about the casserole dish with the red lid. He thought about a sleeping 6-year-old with drool at the corner of her mouth, and a phone call about a spot on a lung, and a man in a gray suit with a folder. He thought about every version of the last year, every wrong turn they could have taken, every night they could have gone inside their separate houses and not come back out. "No," he said. "I didn't know. I wanted it. I didn't let myself know it." "Yeah. Did you?" "I knew in the truck. When you told me about your mom, that morning, sitting in your driveway with my cold feet, that's when I knew." "You never said." "Nothing to say. You weren't ready." "And now?" She looked up at him. "Now we're here." They walked the rest of the way home. He carried Lily up to her room and got her out of the green dress and under her covers without waking her. Elena stood in the doorway and watched him do it, the way she had watched him do it 100 times over the last year, and Nolan, zipping up his daughter's pajama top, understood that this was the life. Not the stage, not the ring, not the applause. This. A sleeping child, a woman in a doorway, a quiet house on a street where the leaves were just beginning to turn. He had been wrong for a long time about what courage was. He had thought, for most of his life, that the brave thing was to endure, to take the hit and keep your feet, to survive. And he had been good at that, the way some people are good at a sport they hate. He had been good at bracing for the worst and keeping his head down and counting his blessings in private, and it had kept him alive through the worst years of his life, and he was not going to pretend that it hadn't. But he understood now that surviving was not the whole job. The whole job was harder than that. The whole job was staying open. The whole job was letting the next person in, even after the last person had left. The whole job was being the man who walked back onto the same stage where he had almost come apart a year before, and saying yes this time, out loud, in front of everybody, to the thing he had been too tired and too afraid to reach for. He closed Lily's bedroom door. He turned. Elena was still in the hall. "Come to bed," she said. "Yeah." "You okay?" "Yeah." "Nolan?" "Yeah." "Thank you." "For what?" "For finally knocking." He almost laughed. He thought about her standing on her porch in gym shorts and one rain boot a year ago, yelling at a raccoon with a broom. He thought about his own face watching her over the fence, half hidden, half smiling despite himself. He thought about how close he had come to keeping his mouth shut and going back into the shop and pretending he had not seen her. "I almost didn't," he said. I know. "I'm glad I did." "Me too." She reached for his hand. He gave it. They walked down the hall together toward the bedroom at the back of the house. His bedroom for 3 years, and his wife's bedroom before that. And now, he supposed, theirs, slowly, in the quiet way these things became true. And somewhere outside, across the fence, a light was on in the kitchen of a small house where a woman had once lived alone and was going to spend less and less time in the coming months, because a different house had become the one she came home to. The story was going to keep happening after that night. Of course, real lives do not end at the good moment. They keep going. There would be a wedding in the spring, small, at the courthouse, with his mother there and his sister there and Lily as the only attendant, in a green dress, carrying a single flower because she had refused to carry more than one. There would be an argument that same summer about a wall Nolan wanted to knock down between the kitchen and the dining room, which Elena lost and then won and then lost again. There would be another charity night, a year after that, at which they would stand in the crowd holding hands, and Nolan would notice, with the particular pride of a man whose life had widened, that he was no longer looking for the exits. But the thing that mattered, the thing that was the point, had happened on a plywood stage on a cold September night. It had happened when a man who had spent 3 years locked inside his own carefulness stood in front of the woman he loved and said out loud that he had been wrong about how to live. It had happened when his 7-year-old daughter had pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and told the truth about something she had known all along. It had happened when a woman had said yes, not once, not twice, but every day before that, in 100 small ways, by staying. Nolan had been wrong about what the biggest risk was. He had thought for most of his life that the biggest risk was loving somebody and losing them. He understood now that the biggest risk had been the one he had almost taken, the risk of not loving her, of letting her go, of choosing the small, safe life over the big, frightening one. And he understood that the people who kept you alive in the end were the ones who refused to let you do that. Lily had refused. Elena had refused. His mother, on a Thursday afternoon on the other end of a phone call, had, without meaning to, refused. He was going to spend the rest of his life trying to do the same for them. He turned off the hall light. He closed the bedroom door behind them. Outside, the street was quiet. The maple trees were turning. Somewhere in a jar on the back porch, a firefly from early summer had long since gone, and Lily had let the next ones go, and the ones after that because she had learned, at 6, what her father had taken 32 years to learn, that you could not keep a good thing by closing the lid. You kept it by letting it stay, and by staying yourself. And for the first time in a long time, on a quiet street in a small town on a September night, Nolan Hayes was staying.